The smell hit Marcus Chen before his eyes could adjust to the darkness. It was 2:47 a.m. when the Tesla's security alert pinged his phone. Someone was inside his Model X in the underground garage. Marcus grabbed his phone and headed down, expecting vandals or thieves. But what he found was worse. Much worse. His driver, James Patterson, the man who'd driven him to board meetings and charity galas for the past 18 months, was curled up in the back seat, surrounded by fast food wrappers, a crumpled blanket, and a toiletry bag from a gas station. A framed photo of two children sat on the dashboard. Next to it, a past-due eviction notice. Final warning: 7 days to vacate. James's eyes opened slowly, meeting Marcus's stare through the window. And in that moment, Marcus Chen realized he knew absolutely nothing about the man who drove him 40 hours a week. Marcus knocked gently on the window. James jolted awake, panic flooding his face. "Mr. Chen, I can explain." "Open the door, James." The older man climbed out slowly, shoulders hunched with shame. He was wearing the same pressed white shirt and black slacks he always wore. But up close, Marcus noticed things he'd never seen before. The frayed collar, the worn-through soles of his shoes, the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. "How long?" Marcus asked quietly. James looked at the concrete floor. 3 weeks, sir." Marcus picked up the eviction notice from the dashboard. The address was in a rough part of Oakland. Rent, $2,800 a month. There was a second paper underneath. A hospital bill. Children's Hospital, Oakland. Patient, Sarah Patterson, age 9. Outstanding balance, $47,392. Leukemia treatment. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He paid James $62,000 a year. Good money, he'd always thought. Generous, even. But apparently, not enough. "Why didn't you tell me?" Marcus heard himself ask. James finally looked up. Would it have mattered? 18 months earlier, Marcus Chen had just sold his third startup. $340 million acquisition. Tech blogs called him the new Silicon Valley golden boy. He was 32, single, and convinced he'd earned every dollar through merit and hustle. He needed a driver. Not for status, he told himself, but for efficiency. Those 2 hours daily in Bay Area traffic were wasted time. Time he could spend on calls, emails, strategy. James had been referred by the service. 56 years old. Former truck driver. Impeccable record. Quiet. Professional. Invisible. Perfect. For 18 months, James drove Marcus everywhere. Morning pickups at 6 a.m. sharp. Airport runs. Late nights after networking events. James never complained, never asked questions, never made small talk unless Marcus initiated it. And Marcus never asked about James's life. He didn't know James had 2 daughters. Didn't know his wife had died 3 years ago from breast cancer, leaving him with $89,000 in medical debt. Didn't know Sarah had been diagnosed with leukemia 10 months ago. Didn't know James worked a second job on weekends at a warehouse just to keep the lights on. In Marcus's world, service workers existed in a strange liminal space. Present but invisible. Essential but forgettable. 3 months ago, Marcus had even cut James's salary by $8,000 annually. Cost optimization, his CFO called it. Market rate adjustment. James had simply nodded and said, "Yes, sir." Marcus remembered that day clearly now. He'd been on his phone, texting his girlfriend about restaurant reservations. He hadn't even looked up when he told James about the pay cut. 6 weeks later, James lost his apartment. He'd tried shelters, but they were full. Tried staying with friends, but he had none left after years of isolation and shame. His daughters lived with his sister in Sacramento, 2 hours away. He sent her every spare dollar for Sarah's treatment. So James had done what desperate people do. He survived. He showered at the gym, used the bathroom at gas stations, slept in the car he drove for the billionaire who never noticed. Until tonight. Now, standing in that concrete garage at 3 a.m., Marcus Chen realized he'd become the exact type of person he'd once despised. The kind who couldn't see past their own reflection. "Get your things," Marcus said quietly. James blinked. "Sir, your things. Get them. You're not sleeping here." "Mr. Chen, I appreciate the concern, but I'll be fine. I've been managing." "James." Marcus met his eyes. "Please." Something in his voice made James stop. He gathered his few belongings. The toiletry bag, the blanket, the photo of his daughters. Marcus led him to his own car, a Porsche Taycan he rarely drove. They rode in silence through empty streets. James kept glancing at Marcus, confused, waiting for the other shoe to drop. They pulled up to the Fairmont Hotel downtown. James tensed. "I can't afford this, sir." You're not paying. At the front desk, Marcus booked a suite. 2 bedrooms. Full kitchen. He handed James the key cards. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. James stared at the key cards like they might disappear. Why are you doing this? Marcus thought about his own father. An immigrant who'd worked 3 jobs to put Marcus through Stanford. Who'd collapsed from exhaustion when Marcus was 19. Who'd died 6 months later, too proud to tell his son he'd been skipping his heart medication because he couldn't afford it. Marcus had been in Paris when his father died, celebrating a venture capital deal. He'd never forgiven himself. Because I should have asked sooner, Marcus said. Because I should have noticed. Because, he paused. Because someone should have done this for my father, and no one did. James's eyes filled with tears. Get some rest, Marcus said softly. We'll talk in the morning. But Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse, staring at the city lights, and made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, Marcus didn't go to his office. Instead, he called his head of HR, Patricia Okonkwo. I need the employment files for all our drivers, security staff, janitorial crew, and administrative assistants. Every single person. Patricia hesitated. Is there a problem? Just send them. What Marcus found over the next 3 hours made him sick. His company, Chen Dynamics, employed 847 people. The engineers, product managers, and executives made 6 figures. Stock options, full benefits, unlimited PTO. But the other 214 people, the ones who kept the offices clean, who drove employees to meetings, who guarded the buildings at night, made an average of $48,000 annually in one of the most expensive cities in America. No stock options, minimal health coverage, no paid sick leave. One security guard, Michael Torres, had worked there for 9 years. He'd never received a raise. His daughter had aged out of his partial insurance plan at 22 and now went without her diabetes medication 3 weeks out of every month to make it stretch. The night janitor, Linda Washington, worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., then took a bus 2 hours to her second job at a grocery store. She slept 4 hours a night. She was 61 years old. The executive assistant pool shared a single health plan with a $7,500 deductible. One woman had given birth in an Uber because she couldn't afford the ambulance. Marcus felt the walls closing in. He'd spent $4.2 million last year on a company retreat in Bali. Another $2.1 million on redesigning the executive floor with Italian marble and custom furniture. His personal compensation package was $19 million. And the people who made his comfortable life possible were living in cars, rationing medication, and choosing between rent and food. He called an emergency meeting with his executive team. We're doing a complete compensation restructuring, he announced. Every employee below $75,000 annually gets an immediate raise to meet Bay Area living wage standards. Full health coverage. Stock options for everyone. And I mean everyone. His CFO, Bradley Morrison, nearly choked. Marcus, that's going to cost us $18 million annually. Then we'll find it. The board won't approve this. I don't care. You own 34% of the company. You can't make this decision unilaterally. Marcus leaned back. Watch me. That afternoon, he visited James at the hotel. The older man answered the door in the hotel robe, looking more rested than Marcus had ever seen him. I paid Sarah's hospital bill, Marcus said. All of it. James froze. What? And I'm giving you a new position. Head of employee welfare. You'll help me rebuild this company the right way. James sat down slowly, tears streaming down his face. Why? He whispered. Because you shouldn't have had to sleep in a car to save your daughter's life. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Marcus knew it would be ugly. He arrived early, James beside him in a new suit Marcus had bought. The boardroom fell silent when they entered. Who's this? Demanded Richard Carlyle, the lead investor and board chair. This is James Patterson, Marcus said. Our new head of employee welfare. He'll be sitting in on this meeting. Absolutely not. Board meetings are confidential. James is now a senior executive. He stays. The tension was electric. Marcus presented his restructuring plan. New minimum salary, $85,000. Universal health coverage with 0 deductible. Equity grants for all employees. Profit-sharing program. Mental health support. Housing stipends. Total cost, $23 million annually. The room erupted. This is financial suicide, Bradley said. We're not a charity. We're also not a sweatshop. Marcus shot back. We pay market rate. Market rate isn't enough when nurses are sleeping in parking lots and drivers are living in cars. Marcus's voice rose. We have $340 million in the bank. We can afford this. Richard leaned forward. Marcus, I understand you're upset about your driver's situation, but you can't let emotion drive business decisions. This sets a dangerous precedent. Dangerous? James spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet but steady. What's dangerous is paying people so little they have to choose between medicine for their children or rent. What's dangerous is pretending we don't see people breaking their backs to make you richer. Excuse me. Richard's face reddened. Who do you think you're talking to? I'm talking to someone who made $4.6 million last year from his board seat while I slept in a car. The room went silent. Marcus pulled out a folder. I did some research. Richard, you chair the boards of 6 companies. All of them have similar compensation structures. Low wages for support staff, minimal benefits, maximum profit extraction. You've built a career on this model. That's how business works, Marcus. If you don't like capitalism, this isn't capitalism. It's exploitation. Then sell your shares and start a nonprofit. Marcus smiled coldly. Or I go public. I've already contacted 3 journalists. The story is ready. Silicon Valley billionaire discovers driver living in company car, exposes industry-wide wage crisis. How do you think that plays? The board members exchanged glances. You're bluffing, Richard said. Marcus slid a printed email across the table. It was from a New York Times reporter confirming an interview for Monday. Try me. The vote was called. The restructuring passed 6-5. Barely, but it passed. As the board members filed out, Richard stopped at the door. You just made yourself a lot of enemies, Marcus. Good. Maybe they'll pay their people better out of spite. After everyone left, James turned to Marcus. You really would have gone public? Marcus nodded. And I still might. Because this isn't just about our company. It's everywhere. James was quiet for a moment. You know they'll come after you now. Let them. But Marcus didn't realize how right James was. 3 days later, the leaks began. Anonymous sources told tech blogs that Marcus was losing his edge, that he was making decisions based on personal guilt rather than data. Someone leaked his therapist's bills, suggesting he was unstable. Then came the lawsuits. 2 investors filed suit claiming breach of fiduciary duty. They argued Marcus was destroying shareholder value for virtue signaling. The battle had just begun. While Marcus fought legal battles, James quietly went to work. He started in the basement of Chen Dynamics, where the custodial staff gathered for breaks. He sat with them, listened, asked questions no executive had ever bothered to ask. The stories emerged slowly, carefully, like secrets too dangerous to speak aloud. A janitor named Carmen told him about the miscarriage she'd had while cleaning the executive bathroom. She called out the next day and been written up for unreliability. A security guard named Devin explained how he'd seen executives bringing in contractors at night to shred documents. When he'd mentioned it to his supervisor, he was transferred to the graveyard shift and his hours were cut. A shuttle driver named Priya described how male executives regularly made inappropriate comments during rides. When she complained to HR, she was told she was too sensitive and reminded that drivers were easily replaceable. James documented everything. Names, dates, incidents, patterns. But the most damning discovery came from an unexpected source. James received an encrypted email one night. No name, just a subject line. You need to see this. Attached were internal HR documents. Complaints going back 7 years. Sexual harassment, wage theft, retaliation, discrimination. Over 140 incidents. And next to each complaint, the same note. Settled confidentially. NDAs signed. Chen Dynamics had been quietly paying people to disappear. James brought the documents to Marcus at midnight. They sat in Marcus's home office, scrolling through page after page of human suffering. Did you know about any of this? James asked quietly. No. Marcus felt hollow. But I should have. Who had access to these files? HR leadership and... Marcus stopped. The board. They knew. They knew. The next morning, Marcus contacted Alicia Reeves, a civil rights attorney known for taking down tech giants. She'd made her name representing whistleblowers and employees in class action suits. They met at a coffee shop in Berkeley, far from Silicon Valley's watchful eyes. You realize what you're doing? Alicia said after reviewing the documents. You're essentially prosecuting yourself. I'm cleaning house. You'll be destroyed. Professionally, financially, socially. This isn't how tech billionaires operate. Then maybe it should be. Alicia studied him for a long moment. You're serious. Completely. She smiled. Then let's burn it all down. Over the next 3 weeks, they built a case. Not just against Chen Dynamics, but against the entire structure of Silicon Valley's two-tier system. The invisible underclass that kept the innovation economy running. But they needed more than documents. They needed voices. James organized the first meeting at a community center in East Oakland. 43 people showed up. Current and former employees. People who'd signed NDAs but were willing to break them if it meant real change. Marcus sat in the back, listening. A woman named Keisha described working as an executive assistant for $47,000 while her boss spent that much on a watch. A man named Carlos talked about being fired 3 days before he qualified for health benefits, then rehired as a contractor at lower pay. A young woman named May sobbed as she explained how she'd been assaulted by a vice president at a company party and was told by HR that she'd had too much to drink and should let it go. By the end of the night, Marcus had heard enough. "I'm sorry," he said, standing. "To all of you. For being blind. For benefiting from a system that hurt you. For taking so long to wake up." Keisha stood. Pretty words. "What are you going to do about it?" Marcus met her eyes. "I'm going to make this public. Every story. Every complaint. Every settlement. And I'm going to testify against my own company if that's what it takes." The room was silent. "You'll lose everything," Carlos said. "Maybe, but you already did. And nobody gave you a choice." One by one, people started nodding. "We're with you," Keisha said. And just like that, Marcus Chen stopped being a billionaire protecting his empire. He became a witness to its crimes. The article dropped on a Monday morning. New York Times, front page of the business section. Tech billionaire exposes his own company's abuses. "I was part of the problem." The byline included Marcus's name as a co-author. He'd done the unthinkable. He'd waived attorney-client privilege, released internal documents, and personally detailed every failure of Chen Dynamics under his leadership. The tech world went nuclear. Within hours, hashtag Silicon Valley Reckoning was trending globally. Other tech workers started sharing their stories. The dam had broken, but the backlash was swift and vicious. Venture capitalists called Marcus a traitor to entrepreneurship. Tech bloggers accused him of performative guilt. Anonymous accounts flooded social media claiming he was doing this for publicity or to dodge worse revelations. His co-founders from previous startups released a joint statement, distancing ourselves from Marcus Chen's recent actions and inflammatory rhetoric. Former friends stopped returning calls. His girlfriend left him, saying she couldn't be with someone so self-destructive. The board voted to remove him as CEO. The vote was 9-2. Marcus was escorted from his own building by security. James met him at the entrance. "They changed the locks," James said quietly. Marcus laughed bitterly. "Guess I know how you felt." But the fight was far from over. That night, Alicia filed a class action lawsuit. Not just against Chen Dynamics, but against 7 other major tech companies with similar practices. She named board members, executives, and HR departments. The lawsuit was for $2.3 billion in damages and unpaid wages. The next day, the Department of Labor announced an investigation into wage practices across Silicon Valley. The California Attorney General opened a criminal inquiry into document destruction and NDA abuse. And then the allies emerged. Senator Elizabeth Warren called Marcus to testify before Congress. He agreed immediately. 3 major pension funds announced they were divesting from tech companies that didn't meet new wage and treatment standards. A coalition of tech workers formed a union, the first successful union drive in Silicon Valley history. James was elected as the first president. On the day of the Congressional hearing, Marcus sat at the witness table. Behind him sat 19 former employees, including James. "Mr. Chen," Senator Warren began, "you've been called many things in recent weeks. Traitor, hypocrite, attention seeker. What do you say to those accusations?" Marcus leaned into the microphone. "I say they're partly right. I am a hypocrite. I built a fortune on the backs of people I refused to see. I gave speeches about innovation while ignoring the human cost. I bragged about disruption while exploiting the people who cleaned my office and drove my car." He paused. "But I'm done being that person. And Silicon Valley needs to be done being that industry. What are you proposing? Mandatory living wages indexed to local costs. Universal health care for all employees, not just engineers. Equity grants for every worker. An end to NDAs that silence abuse. And criminal penalties for executives who retaliate against whistleblowers." A senator from Texas scoffed. "Mr. Chen, what you're describing is socialism." "No, Senator. It's human decency. The fact that you can't tell the difference is exactly the problem." The room erupted in applause and gasps. After the hearing, Marcus stood on the Capitol steps surrounded by reporters. "I've lost my company," he said. I've lost my reputation. I've lost most of my friends. And you know what? I'd do it again. Because James Patterson shouldn't have had to sleep in a car to save his daughter. Because Carmen shouldn't have had a miscarriage at work and been punished for it. Because Devin shouldn't have been threatened for trying to do the right thing. He looked directly into the cameras. To every tech executive watching this, pay your people. All of your people. Not just the ones who code. The ones who clean, who drive, who guard, who assist. Because without them, your empire is just an empty building. The press conference went viral. 47 million views in 24 hours. That night, Marcus sat in his now modest apartment, scrolling through messages. Most were hateful, but some stood out. From Carmen, thank you for seeing us. From Devin, you gave me my voice back. From Priya, my daughter asked me today if I was brave like the man on TV. I said no, but I'm trying to be. And one from James, my daughter Sarah drew you a picture. She says you're her hero. Between you and me, you're mine too. Marcus stared at that message for a long time. He'd lost everything that didn't matter and gained everything that did. 6 months later, the landscape had shifted. 3 tech CEOs had resigned under pressure. 8 companies had implemented sweeping wage reforms. The California legislature passed the Tech Worker Protection Act, mandating living wages and banning exploitative NDAs. Chen Dynamics, now under new leadership, had become an unlikely model. The company's productivity had actually increased after the wage reforms. Turnover dropped 67%. Employee satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. Turns out, when you pay people fairly and treat them like humans, they work better. Who knew? But Marcus wasn't there to see it. Technically, he was unemployed. His board buyout had left him with only $40 million, most of which he'd already donated to worker advocacy groups and medical debt relief funds. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Oakland, drove a used Toyota, shopped at Costco. He'd never been happier. One morning, James called. Turn on CNBC. Marcus flipped on the TV. A breaking news banner. 5 Silicon Valley workers inherit $50 million from anonymous donor. The recipients, Carmen, Devin, Priya, Keisha, and a 5th worker named Thomas who'd been paralyzed in a workplace accident and denied workers' comp. The news anchor speculated about the donor's identity. Marcus smiled. That was the last of his Chen Dynamics buyout. Was that you? James asked. I have no idea what you're talking about. James laughed. You're impossible. How's Sarah? In remission. The doctors say her prognosis is excellent. Marcus felt warmth spread through his chest. That's wonderful, James. Because of you. She's alive because of you. No, she's alive because you never gave up. I just stopped being an obstacle. They talked for a while longer, then hung up. Marcus made coffee and sat by his window, watching the morning sun paint the Oakland Hills gold. His phone buzzed. An unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Latoya Williams. I'm a driver for Uber. I've been sleeping in my car for 4 months. I saw what you did. Do you think you could help more people like me? Marcus sat up. Tell me your story. Over the next 2 hours, Latoya described the gig economy's dark underbelly. No benefits. No stability. Algorithmic management that fired workers without explanation. A workforce of millions treated as disposable. When she finished, Marcus said, I'm going to call you back in 1 hour. Don't go anywhere. He immediately called James, Alicia, and 3 investigative journalists. We need to do it again, he said. But bigger. 2 weeks later, Marcus announced the Worker Dignity Project, a $30 million initiative to investigate and expose labor abuses in the gig economy. The project hired 50 investigators, all former gig workers. They went undercover at Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, Amazon Flex. They documented everything. The resulting report was 400 pages of systematic exploitation. Congress held more hearings. State legislatures acted. 3 companies faced criminal charges. But more importantly, workers organized. Latoya became a lead organizer for Gig Workers Rising. Within a year, they'd won portable benefits, minimum earnings guarantees, and the right to organize. The tech press called Marcus Silicon Valley's conscience. He hated the label. I'm not anyone's conscience, he told a reporter. I'm just someone who finally started listening. On the 1-year anniversary of finding James in the car, Marcus organized a dinner. Not at a fancy restaurant, but at a community center in East Oakland. Everyone came. James and his daughters. Carmen, Devin, Priya, Latoya, Alicia, former employees from Chen Dynamics, current gig workers, activists, organizers. 70 people who'd never had a voice now filled a room with laughter and hope. Marcus stood to speak. A year ago, I thought I was successful. I had money, power, respect. But I was blind. I couldn't see the people right in front of me. I couldn't see that my comfort was built on their suffering. He looked at James. James, you saved my life that night. Not the other way around. Because you showed me what I'd become. And you gave me a chance to be better. James stood, walked over, and embraced him. We saved each other, James said quietly. The room erupted in applause. After dinner, Sarah Patterson, now 10 and healthy, approached Marcus. She handed him a drawing. It showed two figures standing together under a bright sun. One was labeled James. The other was labeled Marcus. At the bottom, in careful child's handwriting, real heroes help each other. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. Can I keep this? Sarah nodded solemnly. It's for you. Because you saw my daddy when nobody else did. Later that night, Marcus stood outside the community center, watching people leave. Families reunited. Friends laughing. People who'd been invisible now seen. LaToya stopped beside him. You know what's wild, she said. A year ago, I thought billionaires were the enemy. Like all of them. But you proved that people can change. That systems can change. That maybe we're not fighting against people, we're fighting against blindness. Marcus nodded slowly. I think that's right. Most people aren't evil. They're just not paying attention. And when you're comfortable, it's easy to ignore what's uncomfortable. So how do we make people pay attention? We keep telling stories. We keep making noise. We keep refusing to be invisible. She smiled. Then I guess we've got work to do. Yeah, Marcus said, looking up at the stars breaking through Oakland's city lights. I guess we do. 2 years later, Marcus stood in a very different boardroom. It wasn't mahogany and marble. It was a converted warehouse in East Oakland, with mismatched chairs and a whiteboard covered in planning notes. The board members weren't venture capitalists. They were workers. This was the People First Foundation, Marcus's new project. A nonprofit funded by his remaining wealth, dedicated to investigating labor abuses and advocating for systemic change. James served as executive director. Carmen headed HR. Devin ran security training programs. LaToya led the gig economy division. They'd just announced their biggest initiative yet, a database of every tech company's labor practices, publicly searchable, updated in real time. Transparency as activism. This will make us a lot of enemies, James said. Good, Marcus replied. We're doing it right then. That afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected call. Mr. Chen, this is Bradley Morrison. Marcus froze. His former CFO. The one who'd fought the wage reforms hardest. What do you want, Bradley? I want to apologize. Bradley's voice was quiet. You were right. About everything. I was wrong. Silence. I've left Chen Dynamics. I'm working with a nonprofit now, helping companies restructure their compensation models ethically. I know I can't undo the damage I caused, but I wanted you to know that what you did changed me. Changed how I see business, how I see people. Marcus exhaled slowly. Thank you for telling me that. Would you ever consider meeting? I'd like to learn from what you're building. Yeah, Marcus said. I'd like that. People could change. That was the whole point. That evening, Marcus returned to the community center where the anniversary dinner had been held. But tonight was different. Tonight was Sarah Patterson's 12th birthday party. The room was full of kids, balloons, cake, chaos. Sarah spotted Marcus and ran over, tackling him with a hug. Uncle Marcus. You came. Wouldn't miss it, kiddo. James appeared with 2 plates of cake. She insisted on inviting you. You're her hero. She's mine, Marcus said, watching Sarah laugh with her friends. He thought about alternate timelines. If he'd never checked his car that night. If he'd called the police instead of talking to James. If he'd chosen comfort over conscience. Sarah would be dead. James would be broken. And Marcus would still be blind. You ever regret it? James asked quietly. Giving it all up? Marcus thought about his old life. The private jets. The galas. The power lunches and board meetings. The emptiness disguised as ambition. Not for a second. They stood together, watching children play. Children who had futures because someone finally decided to pay attention. Later, as the party wound down, Marcus helped clean up. He was taking out trash bags when a young girl he didn't recognize approached. Are you the billionaire who gave everything away? Marcus knelt down. I didn't give everything away. I gave away money. But I got something much more valuable. What? I learned how to see people. Really see them. The girl thought about this. My mom says you're famous. Your mom's nice. But I'm not famous. I just finally did the right thing after doing the wrong thing for a very long time. Is it hard? Doing the right thing? Marcus smiled. Sometimes. But it's a lot easier than living with yourself when you don't. She nodded seriously. then ran back to her mother. Marcus walked outside into the cool Oakland evening. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm a teacher making $43,000 in San Francisco. I can't afford to live where I teach. Can you help? Marcus smiled and typed back. Tell me your story. Let's see what we can do. Because the work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen wasn't building an empire. He was building something better. He was building a world where people like James didn't have to sleep in cars. Where people like Sarah could get the medicine they needed. Where people like LaToya could work with dignity. Where teachers and drivers and janitors and security guards weren't invisible. They were essential. They were seen. They were valued. And that, Marcus had learned, was worth more than any $1 billion could ever buy.